Virginia's cannabis industry may finally be approaching the moment operators have been waiting for since legalization began in 2021. For nearly 5 years, Virginia has existed in one of the most unusual positions in the cannabis industry. Adults have been allowed to legally possess cannabis and grow a limited number of plants at home, but there has been no regulated retail market where consumers could legally purchase it. That created a situation where possession was legal, demand continued to grow, and yet licensed businesses had almost no opportunity to participate in the adult use market. After years of legislative debates, governmental vetoes, and competing proposals, Virginia leaders have now reached a compromise that would allow licensed adult use cannabis sales to begin on July 1st, 2027. The additional time is intended to give regulators the opportunity to develop licensing procedures, establish testing standards, create consumer protections, and build the oversight necessary to launch a regulated marketplace correctly. I'm Daniel Sabet, CFO at GreenGrowth CPAs, and I've worked with cannabis operators across multiple states as they prepared for new markets, expanded operations, and navigated changing regulations. One lesson has remained consistent regardless of the state. The companies that create long-term value rarely win because they are first. They win because they spend the time preparing before the market officially opens. Virginia operators now have that opportunity. Instead of rushing to react when licenses become available, businesses have roughly a year to strengthen their financial systems, evaluate their capital needs, build operating plans, and position themselves for what could be one of the largest new cannabis markets on the East Coast. That preparation period may ultimately become more valuable than the opening day itself. To understand why this announcement is so significant, it's important to understand what Virginia has experienced over the past several years. When Virginia legalized adult use possession in 2021, many people assumed retail stores would quickly follow. Instead, the commercial side of legalization stalled as different administrations and legislatures disagreed over the marketplace and how it should be structured. Several proposals passed through the General Assembly only to be vetoed or delayed, leaving Virginia with legal possession but no licensed retail sales. The result was entirely predictable. Consumer demand never disappeared. It simply shifted into unregulated channels. Industry estimates have suggested that nearly all cannabis purchases in Virginia continue to occur outside a regulated retail system because consumers had no legal adult use stores to purchase from. That's why this compromise matters. The conversation is no longer centered on whether Virginia should have a regulated marketplace. The conversation has shifted toward how the marketplace should operate and how businesses should prepare for it. From a financial perspective, this changes the conversation dramatically. Cultivators can begin evaluating future production capacity. Processors can begin forecasting manufacturing needs. Retail operators can begin modeling revenue, staffing, inventory requirements, and working capital before opening their doors. One of the biggest mistakes I see in newly legalized markets is assuming that obtaining a license is the difficult part. In reality, obtaining a license is simply the admission ticket. Operating a profitable cannabis business requires disciplined financial management long after the excitement of licensing has passed. I have watched this transition occur in several emerging cannabis markets, and the businesses that consistently outperform their competitors usually have one thing in common. They spend more time building systems than building hype. Imagine two entrepreneurs preparing to open dispensaries in Virginia. Both have experienced management teams. Both raise similar amounts of capital. Both receive licenses during their first application cycle. The first operator spends nearly all of their time designing the retail space, selecting products, and preparing for a successful grand opening. Those are certainly important decisions, but relatively little attention is given to inventory controls, cash flow forecasting, financial reporting, or operational procedures. The second operator takes a different approach. Before opening, management develops detailed financial projections, establishes inventory management procedures, creates monthly cash flow forecasts, and builds internal compliance systems, and determines exactly how much working capital will be required during the first 12 months of operations. Every major decision is supported by financial analysis instead of assumptions. At the grand opening, both businesses look equally successful. 6 months later, however, the difference begins to appear. The second operator understands which products generate the highest inventory turnover, which categories produce the strongest gross margins, and how quickly inventory should be replenished without tying up unnecessary cash. Because management reviews financial performance consistently, purchasing decisions become increasingly data-driven, allowing the business to preserve working capital while responding more effectively to changing consumer demand. The first operator may still generate strong sales, but without those same financial systems, profitability becomes much more difficult to maintain as competition increases and operating costs continue to grow. This is exactly what we've seen across mature markets like Michigan, Missouri, as well as New Jersey. The businesses that succeed over the long term are rarely the ones that simply generate the most revenue. They're the businesses that consistently convert revenue into sustainable profits. As Virginia moves closer to launching adult use retail sales, I believe operators should view the next year as a planning period rather than a waiting period. This is the time to evaluate entity structure, secure appropriate financing, build the right accounting systems, establish compliance procedures, and create realistic financial projections based on conservative assumptions instead of optimistic expectations. Those investments may not generate headlines today, but they often become the foundation for long-term profitability once the market opens. It's also important to recognize that competition will likely increase quickly after retail sales begin. While early demand should be strong, additional cultivators, processors, and retailers will continue entering the marketplace over time. Operators that understand their costs, monitor inventory carefully, manage cash flow proactively, and make decisions based on financial reporting will be in a much stronger position than businesses relying solely on market excitement. Virginia has already demonstrated that legalization alone does not create a functioning cannabis industry. Building a successful regulated marketplace requires thoughtful legislation, effective oversight, responsible operators, and businesses that are prepared to compete for the long term rather than simply capitalize on opening day. After nearly 5 years of waiting, Virginia finally appears to have a roadmap toward licensed adult use retail sales beginning on July 1st, 2027. If that timeline holds, the next 12 months will become one of the most important preparation periods the state's cannabis industry has ever experienced. The operators who use the time to build disciplined financial systems, maintain adequate capitalization, and focus on operational excellence will likely be the ones leading Virginia's market long after the first dispensaries open their doors. Thank you for watching. Stay sharp.